Since the dawn of civilization, the powerful have conspired to twist the course of history to suit their own designs. Like puppeteers, a few shadowy figures could still be pulling the strings of destiny for billions. Those who cry conspiracy are usually mocked at, for sometimes the truth is so obvious it goes unnoticed. Are those merely paranoid fantasies cooked up to feed the appetite of paperback readers and web surfers, but which bear no relation to reality? Or are we living out some perfectly executed plan? Wars, revolutions, social movements, terrorist attacks. Everything is given an official explanation. But perhaps nothing is what it seems to be. Let's dare to unveil the incredible world of secret societies.
Of all the secret societies we know of, there is one that stands out from the rest due to certain characteristics that make it especially menacing. Its treacherous tenets, the scandal and the paranoia they've unleashed, and more disturbing, the suspicion that since its creation, it has intervened in each and every major world event that has steered the course of history. The Illuminati of Bavaria, the most fearsome secret society in history. More than 200 years ago, here in Germany, in what used to be the independent electorate of Bavaria, a secret society was formed whose objective simply spelled world domination. Its strategy to abolish all religions and governments in order to take control of humanity under a unified state, with no countries, no borders, and under the command of a single leader. Its name, the Illuminati of Bavaria. Perhaps you've never heard of them, or perhaps you have, and are familiar with some of the theories that blame them for all the bad things that have befallen us. Theories that intertwine verifiable facts with delirious conspiracy theories that run the gamut from the United States to aliens, but have a common thread in the founding tenet of the Illuminati, the creation of a new world order. And perhaps, and only perhaps, that great jumble of information and disinformation that today pervades the media is also part of a broader, sinister plan.
The Order of the Illuminati was officially prescribed more than 200 years ago. But if we pay close attention to subsequent events, we shall find an alarming succession of coincidences that suggest strongly that they are still among us, and that their power, far from having waned, is still very much in evidence.
To find out just how much is fact and how much is fiction, we shall start off by learning what history has to tell us about this mysterious order. Then we shall investigate what has happened since the order's demise. Finally, we shall draw our own conclusions.
On May the 1st, 1776, Adam Weishaupt, a young canon law professor at the University of Bavaria, founded the Order of the Perfectibilists, also known as the Illuminati of Bavaria. Though it was influenced by the Illuminist trends of the time, the name of the order was inspired by the Spanish Alumbrados and the French Illumines, old Gnostic sects that upheld the communion of man and God without the intermediation of the Church. Initially, the stated objectives of the Illuminati seemed entirely harmless and philanthropic. To stimulate a human and sociable vision, support virtue where it may be threatened or oppressed by vice, to promote the progress of merit-worth people and foster the benefit of those deprived of education. Adam Weishaupt.
Little is known of Adam Weishaupt, but he was undoubtedly a mysterious man. Even his name has given rise to speculation. Adam Weishaupt, in German, can be broken down into Adam, the first man, Weis, knowledge, or wisdom, Haupt, leader. That is to say, the first man that leads the wise. An entirely fitting name to define his role in the order he established and in the sinister plans he propounded.
Adam Weishaupt was born in Ingolstadt, Bavaria, in the south of Germany in 1748. A convert from Judaism, he was raised and educated by Jesuits. A precocious intellectual, at the age of 28, he was dean of the Jesuit University of Canon Law at Ingolstadt. In spite of his apparent religious fervour and Catholic zeal, Weishaupt was obsessed with ancient Egyptian rites and rituals, and at the same time he also maintained regular contact with Freemasons, the historic enemies of the Catholic Church. Like many thinkers of that era, he admired Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who insisted that man was noble and free by nature, and could be governed without the need for religious or established institutions. The only practice that one ought to teach children is that they should never submit to one. Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
The Illuminati were created within a Masonic lodge to which Weishaupt belonged. By that time, Freemasonry was already a prestigious secret society of long standing, and its excessive secrecy and closeness to the powers that be had turned it into the ideal nurturing ground for Weishaupt's order, who began to infiltrate it. The Freemasons, good keepers of secrets, would contribute knowingly or otherwise to the Illuminati plan.
For his order, Weishaupt borrowed the strict, military-style hierarchical structure of the Jesuits and divided it into 13 degrees. First level, nursery, preparation, novice, Minerval, Illuminatus minor. Second level, Freemasonry, subdivided into 2 orders: Symbolic Apprentice, Fellow of the Craft, Master Freemason, and Scottish, Illuminatus Major and Illuminatus Dirigens. Third level, Mysteries, subdivided into 2 orders: Lesser Mysteries, Priest and Regent, and Greater Mysteries, Magus, Rex, and King, or Areopagite.
Curiously enough, the order was an incomplete structure. There were many minorvals, but the higher hierarchies were never completely filled, and they only existed in Weishaupt's mind, who proclaimed himself king, or Areopagite.
Up until the year 1780, the Order of the Illuminati was only known within the boundaries of Bavaria. With the inclusion of Baron Nige, an enthusiastic Freemason reformer, new recruits flooded in. New academies for the Minervals were established and strict codes for secrecy enforced. The novices, or Minervals, did not know anyone in the order other than their instructor. If, after 3 years as Minervals, they were chosen to continue their training, they went on to become Illuminatus minor, and were permitted to know a little more about the real objectives of the order.
Weishaupt designed for his order a complex system of codes and aliases that seemed to pre-announce a strategy that would allow them to continue working underground sometime in the future. The Illuminati became a true secret society within another, that is, within Freemasonry itself. It soon became clear that the true objectives of Weishaupt and his Illuminati went far beyond simple altruism.
The order was symbolized as the letter O with a dot in the center. Everyone assumed pseudonyms inspired by Roman and Greek history. Adam Weishaupt, Spartacus; Baron Nige, Philo;
Franz Xavier Zwack, Cato;
Marquis of Costanza, Diomedes, and so on. Cities and regions also received coded Hellenic names: Munich, Athens; Frankfurt, Thebes; Bavaria, Greece. Letters were coded with numbers in the lower degrees, and with hieroglyphics in the higher degrees.
Just 7 years after he had founded his order, Adam Weishaupt boasted of having more than 600 followers in Bavaria alone, and many more in the rest of Europe. The order attracted influential people, including nobles and members of the clergy.
Paradoxically, active members of the Catholic Church could be found among the ranks of the Illuminati. Perhaps these recruits were open-minded members of the clergy who had been attracted by the order's modernizing and humanistic views. But it seems equally likely that the Catholic Church had decided to infiltrate the order in order to learn more about its true objectives. If this were the case, the results were soon plain to see.
The order of the Illuminati spread across Europe like wildfire, and soon the powers that be, the Catholic Church and Freemasonry itself, tried to put a limit to its expansion. Adam Weishaupt went into exile and worked underground. His secret files exposed and his true motives discovered. But the Brotherhood had already dispersed, and all its branches were prepared to act anonymously and in utmost secrecy.
In 1790, the Order of the Illuminati had officially ceased to exist in Bavaria, Prussia, and the other domains of which is now modern Germany. But perhaps their disappearance was little more than a charade. After all, a secret society is born to act in the shadows, and when it is discovered, it must die in order to go on living.
The order itself could perish, but not its objectives. The Illuminati fire had started, and it would be unstoppable.
To return to man his fundamental rights of equality and liberty, we should begin by destroying every religion and every civil society, and finish abolishing property. Adam Weishaupt. The secret society, known as the Order of the Illuminati, rose in the late 18th century. It was not the first secret society, and it would not be the last. But its name would always remain a magnet for conspiracy theorists, who maintain that it is still active among us today.
5 years after the Order of the Illuminati was created, Baron Adolf Knigge joined its ranks. He was the man behind its fast expansion and its attempt to infiltrate all of Freemasonry. Knigge, a bankrupt nobleman, a Freemason, a scholar and an occultist, found that Weishaupt and his Illuminati gave a new sense of purpose to his life.
Knigge joined the order and worked for the Illuminati cause with fervour and conviction. In very little time, he was able to infiltrate most of the major Freemasonry lodges, with the exception of the English and Scottish ones, which perhaps due to their conservatism, rejected Knigge's liberal ideas.
But barely 4 years after joining the order, Baron Knigge left, accusing Weishaupt of being a tyrant filled with delusions of grandeur, a megalomaniac that had deceived his own followers by claiming that the order had an ancient origin, when in fact it was a new cult tailor-made for his own personal glory. The events that followed would vindicate Knigge's charge. The innocent and charitable order of the Illuminati had deceitful objectives, and now, thanks to Knigge's contribution, it also had the capacity to achieve them.
A short time after Knigge's desertion, Bavaria was buzzing with rumours that a certain secret order was aiming to put an end to established order and organised religion, and to create a new world order under a single unified government. This information could only have come from either Knigge himself or from those Jesuit infiltrators who had certainly witnessed strange initiation rites.
A great deal has been said about the rituals of secret societies. The Illuminati were no exception. Perhaps the Jesuits who witnessed them decided it was time to act up. As a result of their testimony, the Catholic Church forced the Elector of Bavaria to ban the order.
There were 3 rooms. In the last one there was a richly decorated red throne. On the other side there was a table with a red tablecloth, upon which lay the garments of the regent, a white leather cuirass with a red cross, and a white cloak with another red cross. The candidate walks across this room dressed like a slave, chains hanging from his hands. and the regents say, "Stop, only free men can enter." And the defenders respond, "He is free, he has fled from his oppressors to join the Brotherhood." The room was red and brightly lit. The provincial was seated on the throne, and the other regents were in the middle room. The first room was black. It was used for the preparation of the novice, and in the center upon a platform there was a human skeleton, at whose feet lay a crown and sword. What do you think of these sad spoils? Was he a nobleman or a peasant? The correct thing to do was not to answer. The candidate received the explanation. The human condition is the only thing that matters. After that, the candidate took the oath. From a distance, these rituals seemed to be rather naive, and Weishaupt's objectives unobtainable, even risible. But if we continue to analyze the historical events that followed, our laughter might turn to a horrible grimace. In 1783, 4 professors of the Marianus Academy were interrogated at a court of law on account of their belonging to the order. All eventually admitted that the Illuminati abjured Christianity, defended sensual pleasures, liberty, equality, and the right to commit suicide.
The confession was made public and caused a tremendous uproar. How much had the heretics infiltrated the society? What was the reach of their plans for world domination? Who really were these enemies of church and state?
The Elector of Bavaria intended to eradicate this evil as he perceived it, and passed a law prohibiting every kind of secret meeting, a measure that, unfairly or not, affected all of Freemasonry. Finally, by means of another law, he banned the Illuminati altogether. In 1786, the home of Illuminati lawyer von Zwack was raided and various papers and correspondence seized.
But it was a freak event that sealed the destiny of the Illuminati, a bizarre accident that would be taken advantage of by the critics of the order and used to deal them a fatal blow.
On July the 10th, 1785, a mysterious man rode swiftly under the skies of Bavaria. He was the apostate, Abbot Lanz, a friend and personal envoy of Adam Weishaupt, and an Illuminati. He never reached his destination. A lightning bolt struck him dead, leaving behind only his charred corpse. Curiously, the papers that he carried were not affected by the fire. When the authorities went through his sack, they found letters and documents that further incriminated the members of the order. Thus Weishaupt could not avoid the disclosure of his true objectives, together with confidential information about his order's most important members. His plans for world domination and the abolition of the state, religion and private property, all penned in his very own handwriting, had come to light. Thus began the Illuminati panic, never to end.
The episode of the lightning-struck rider sealed the fate for the Illuminati. Their world seemed to be coming to an end, but the facts that followed showed that in spite of these setbacks, Weishaupt's influence remained in full force and made him practically untouchable.
In 1785, Weishaupt was dismissed from his university and expelled from Bavaria. Amazingly, instead of sending him to prison, the authorities offered him a compensation payment of 800 florins per year, which he rejected. Weishaupt went into exile, avowing that the order would return 10 times more powerful. Whether or not he kept his word is still a matter for speculation.
Bearing in mind the charges that were levied against them, the lightness of the sentences passed is quite suspicious. Some even had the good fortune to be compensated with ready money. Perhaps the order already had enough political and economic leverage to press on the authorities. The fact is that their enforced exile had an unwanted consequence: the dispersion of the Illuminati to the 4 corners of the globe.
Adam Weishaupt found a safe haven in Regensburg, where he published a pamphlet in which he clarified the charitable principles of the order. He then took up residence in Gotha, whose duke was an Illuminatus. The official story says that he abandoned all political activity and made his peace with the Catholic Church. Thereafter to lead a tranquil life, far removed from conspiracies.
Such a luxurious and peaceful exile strikes as a suspiciously serene end for the leading conspirator of his time. It is reasonable to suppose that Weishaupt could have kept on working despite his low profile. And even if his retirement had been genuine, the order of the Illuminati already had a life of its own, as would soon be detected during the one episode that shook Western civilization the most and lay the groundwork for a true new world order: the French Revolution.
During its heyday, the Order of the Illuminati had extended its tentacles of influence to France. There it recruited, among others, Frederick the Dietrich, the mayor of Strasbourg, Mirabeau, the politician, and the Duke of Orleans, who recruited followers to the Parisian Freemasonry lodges. The strength of our order lies in its secrecy. It should never appear anywhere under its own name, but always shrouded in another name and another occupation. Adam Weishaupt. The connection between the Illuminati and the Jacobins during the French Revolution of 1789 was denounced by one of the order's most fervent detractors, Abbot Augustin Barruel. Likewise, the Scottish Freemason, author John Robison, devoted a long and verbose chapter of his work to what he regarded as the Illuminati's influence on the revolution. Robison maintained that Weishaupt and the Club of the Illuminati, together with the Club of the Jacobins, controlled the National Assembly, and from Paris ruled all of France.
One wonders if the Illuminati acted in good faith, seeking to free the French from royal oppression, or if the revolution was merely a convenient vehicle for its plans for creating a new world order, free from monarchy and religion, but under their control.
Little more is known about the order, since all the files related to it were conveniently destroyed during Allied bombing of German cities during the Second World War.
Who were the Illuminati? Heroes fighting for liberty and reason, or demented tyrants who sought to enslave the world? The answer has as many facets as there are ways of interpreting history, and the truth is that time has not helped to solve the enigma.
A short time before its apparent disbanding, the Order of the Illuminati had lodges in more than 25 European cities, from Munich to London, including Vienna, Paris, and Naples. Pretty soon its name became associated with other illustrious names, and powerful clans and families that to this day decide the destiny of the world.
Here is where the official history ends and the tracks of the Illuminati disappear. Adam Weishaupt died in 1830, apparently removed from any secret activity. But people noticed that the Illuminati plan for world domination coincided suspiciously with many of the events that apparently arose naturally by the will of the people.
Princes and nations will disappear without violence from the earth. The human race will become one family, and the world the abode of reasonable men. Adam Weishaupt. Up until its apparent dissolution in 1790, the Order of the Illuminati boasted members in all the important European cities. The Catholic Church's attempt to root out and destroy the Order, and the political persecution of its most important leaders had precisely the opposite effect of what was intended. The Illuminati was scattered to the four winds, And in the shadows, they moved like fish in water.
Even after the apparent dismissal of the order, there were many who doubted that they had really ceased to operate. Their infiltration had been so widespread that every Freemason could now be suspected of being an undercover Illuminati. So the whole of Freemasonry was proscribed, and there was more to come. The order's reputation quickly spread to the New World. Books by Abbot Agustin Barruel and John Robison alerting the world to the imminent Illuminati peril were published in the recently founded United States, generating panic among their readers. The paranoia had crossed the Atlantic.
In 1776, the year in which Weishaupt founded his order and began to infiltrate Freemasonry, the United States declared its independence. Many of its founding fathers were Freemasons. It is not known if some of them were subsequently recruited by the Illuminati. What is known is that many American religious communities felt threatened by the freedom of worship guaranteed by the new Constitution, which they denounced as part of an Illuminati conspiracy. In 1798, when the second president of the USA, John Adams, established May the 9th as a day of fasting and worship to implore the heavens' mercy and blessing for the imperiled nation, fingers were pointed at the order founded by Weishaupt, and a wave of panic flowed across New England. We should strive to do all we possibly can to endeavour the advance of the Illuminati in all important public positions. Adam Weishaupt. In Boston, Reverend Jedediah Morse dedicated his sermons to the Illuminati threat. The media echoed his words, but no firm evidence of Illuminati conspiracy was ever uncovered.
An immensely vast, rich and potentially powerful country where the practice of Freemasonry was widespread and accepted was certainly a fertile land in which to sow the Illuminati seed. Up to what point was the Illuminati panic of New England exclusively based on absurd conspiracy theories promoted by zealous religious leaders?
It was none other than Thomas Jefferson who, after reading Abbot Barruel, came out in defense of Adam Weishaupt. In 1800, Jefferson wrote to his friend Madison, "Adam Weishaupt believes in the indefinite perfectibility of man. He thinks he may in time be rendered so perfect that he will be able to govern himself in every circumstance, so as to injure none, and to do all the good he can, to leave government no occasion to exercise their powers over him, and of course to render political government useless. This, you know, is not far removed from our own ideals." Jefferson's main opponents, the Federalist Party, founded by Alexander Hamilton, proclaimed that Jefferson, as well as the Democratic Republican Party, were all controlled by the Illuminati. Nothing was ever proven. Jefferson's party is the forerunner of the Democrats and Republican parties that today take turns to govern the USA.
The Illuminati paranoia faded out in the 19th century, but almost 100 years later it was reborn, stronger than ever.
In the early 20th century, English right-wing writer Nestor Webster stated, without offering any proof, that since 1786 a lodge of the Order of the Illuminati had become established in Virginia and 14 other American cities. According to her, this had given rise to a hidden theocracy of Jews, Kabbalists, Masons, anarchists, Illuminati, occultists, and heretics. With her ignorance and racism, Nestor Webster contributed to a renewal of interest in the order she manifestly abhorred, and formally introduced anti-Semitism as an important element in conspiracy theorizing.
Sadly, no conspiracy theory is worth its salt if it does not include the Jews in it. The writings of Nestor Webster may have stoked the flames, but the fact remains that long before that, and long after, theories of world domination have always included economic power, especially international banking, an activity that is often exclusively and mistakenly attributed to Jews. And the Illuminati conspiracy was no exception.
Many authors of supposedly serious history books uphold the idea that international banking is in the hands of the Illuminati Jews, who for centuries have financed both sides fighting wars in order to create anarchy and chaos, a state of affairs that would, in their view, inevitably lead to a new world order, which the Illuminati would come to control. The bête noire of these conspiracy buffs is the Rothschild clan, immensely powerful and conveniently Jewish. History tells us something different. The only connection between the Rothschild clan and the Illuminati is that the patriarch of the Rothschild clan, Amsel Meyer, had, among many other clients, Prince William of Hesse, who seems to have been one of the first members of the Order of the Illuminati. Though it's true that the Rothschilds, in common with almost all European bankers, financed wars and revolutions, this activity, though morally questionable, does not constitute evidence that they were world conspirators or Illuminati.
There is no proven connection between Jews and the Illuminati. However, in the early 20th century, another English writer, Lady Queensborough, proclaimed and denounced the existence of a global conspiracy in which Jews and the Illuminati played a key role. Her books, though poorly researched and devoid of proper evidence, were widely read at the time, a period which we should not forget coincided with the rise of Adolf Hitler and the slaughter of 6 million European Jews, among other victims.
In spite of the conspiracy theories that link Judaism, international banking, world domination, and the Illuminati, Weishaupt himself wrote, "Jews, pagans, women, monks, and members of other societies are excluded from the order." The vast majority of Illuminati were Christians by birth. Many of them were drawn from the nobility, and were even clergymen. Women and Jews were only to be accepted in separate lodges and academies. In spite of this, it has frequently been claimed that the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, an anti-Semitic rant drawn up by the Russian Tsar's secret police, is in reality the literal transcription of a discussion of Illuminati Congress, where a group of Jews outlined plans to take over the world. Adolf Hitler used this libel to stoke hatred against the Jews, and even denounced the Jewish Masonic conspiracy. The curious thing is that many of the very same authors and conspiracy hunters who attack Jews and Freemasons do not hesitate to accuse Hitler himself as a covert Illuminatus, together with Stalin and Marx, and finally end up putting in the same bag Marxists, Bolsheviks, bankers, Jews and Nazis, a decidedly unlikely mix.
Jews have not been the only ones to be singled out. The Illuminati have also been linked to a larger or lesser degree with whatever bogeyman persecution mania the human mind can concoct. Terrorists, demons, even extraterrestrials. And it is here where information blurs into disinformation.
In 1976, a writer named Des Griffin tried to revive the belief that the origin of the Illuminati is the rebellion of the Lord's angels and the expulsion of Lucifer. The name Lucifer means him who brings light, just as the word Illuminati means the illuminated. A thesis that not even Weishaupt himself could have dreamt up. Other authors believe that the Illuminati obsession with power can be traced to our reptilian brain, the brainstem that controls our impulses, and in some few incoherent sentences conclude that the Illuminati are really galactic reptiles disguised as human beings. A search on the internet for the words New World Order produces more than 1,400 million web pages, most of dubious content.
So much disinformation and stupidity is eye-catching. Why are there so many theories dedicated to the minuscule group of conspirators who supposedly disappeared more than 200 years ago? What if the paranoid are not totally wrong? After all, we compare the world in 1790 with the world today, the main Illuminati objectives have been achieved, or have at least been set in motion. Coincidence? Or is it that this wealth of conspiracy theories is just serving the purpose of drawing our attention away from certain irrefutable facts?
We shall direct all of humanity, secretly. We will influence all political transactions. Adam Weishaupt. Since its dissolution in 1790, up until the present day, the Order of the Illuminati has been the prey of choice for a legion of conspiracy hunters. Most of the accusations are downright hilarious. Satanic cults, scientific experiments in parallel dimensions, contacts with aliens, and all of the above simultaneously. So much disinformation helps conceal certain historical facts that chime perfectly well with the original Illuminati plan to generate a new world order under their control.
The saying goes that the best way to hide a secret is to shout it in the marketplace. In the case of the Illuminati, the saying holds true. Because if we analyse carefully some of the major world events of the last 200 years, we will see that the ideals of Adam Weishaupt and the Illuminati of Bavaria seem to have borne fruit. Let's start with their first postulate to put an end to established government.
Since the creation of the Order of the Illuminati, the European monarchies have indeed lost all real power. Most modern countries are now constitutional democracies. And those which still have royal families use them as mere ornaments of power, or as tourist attractions. The Bolshevik Revolution not only put an end to the Russian monarchy, it also abolished private property, another of the Illuminati ideals. The resultant Soviet Union also complied with another Illuminati objective, soon implemented by every Western nation, to establish full, equal rights for men and women.
Let us speak now of the second postulate, unification under a single world government.
Since its creation in 1945, conspiracy mongers have considered the United Nations and its predecessor, the League of Nations, the Illuminati dream come true. A supranational agency capable of passing resolutions with which sovereign states must comply or else face the consequences. The most terrifying aspects of these theories is that in order for the UN to be created, 2 world wars had to be fought, in which millions lost their lives. Conspiracy theorists will say that the wars were just part of an Illuminati plan to lead us to where we stand today. Above all, the truth remains that Weishaupt's first postulate of creating a new world order under a unified government is closer to becoming true today than it was 200 years ago.
And what about the third objective of the order? To put an end to religion. When Weishaupt spoke of religion, he spoke of the established religion in Europe, Christianity. So what of Christianity today?
Thanks to the secret activities of the Order, or else the growing influence of humanistic and rationalistic doctrines, since the creation of the Illuminati, the Catholic Church has been steadily losing its influence. Science and reason have encroached on the territory that was once ruled by faith, and today religion occupies a limited space in our lives compared to what it had 200 years ago. A space that is continually contracting thanks to ephemeral but more contemporary styles of worship that attack the central tenets of Catholicism. Abortion, euthanasia and divorce, only the most visible symptoms of a structural weakening of the once almighty Church of Rome.
And finally, a new world order. Isn't this precisely what globalization proposes? Globalization itself seems like an Illuminati dream come true. Free flow of capital, free flow of information. The sensation that each time we are more in control of our own decisions. But all of it, capital, information, servers, internet, is in actual fact manipulated by a single world power. Are we living in a world designed by Adam Weishaupt? The next logical question is, who is the leader of the Order of the Illuminati today? Who are Weishaupt's successors, if indeed they exist?
Many groups have claimed to be the heirs of the Order of the Illuminati of Bavaria. Usually these are sects or small groups that few people take seriously and do not pose any threat. That is why conspiracy mongers aim in another direction: the United States. Their chief argument centers on the March the 6th, 1991 speech, when George H. Bush, President of the USA and former director of the CIA, used the phrase New World Order when addressing Congress. After defeating Saddam Hussein in a war that many today regard as an imperialistic blow against an oil-producing country.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind.
The theory contradicts itself in as much as the government of the USA is actually one of the most conservative in the modern world. But is this fact enough to discount it altogether? Could it not well be another contrivance of that many-headed monster that once appeared in the form of the Order of the Illuminati? Does not the inscription Novus Ordo Seclorum, which translates as a new order of the ages, in other words, a new world order, appear on the dollar bill? Were not most of the founding fathers Freemasons, along with many of the prominent public figures who followed them at a time when Freemasonry was infiltrated by the Illuminati?
One must speak at times in one voice, and sometimes in another, so that our true purpose turns out always to be unfathomable to the lower members. The end justifies the means. Adam Weishaupt.
The fact that the most powerful country in the world is run by Illuminati is without doubt a laughable theory, but a laugh that brings a chill. Because if it were true, what does the Order have in store for us in years to come? And worse, how deep is their power of infiltration? Is the power of the Illuminati simply an exaggeration by bestseller writers and fools? Or are we on our inevitable way to a new world order? United States of America, the most powerful nation of all time. A good friend to have, a terrible enemy to confront. But the world champions of democracy may be hiding a dirty little secret, because they may well be the first ever Masonic country. A nation built on secret alliances, yet still their very own citizens remain unaware. As does the entire world. Among those who instigated the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Latin American Wars of Independence, a startling number were either paid-up Freemasons or sympathetic to Freemasonry. But particularly in the case of the United States, the Masonic influence didn't stop once independence had been achieved. Freemasonry also later participated in the planning and development of this country's political infrastructure, and in the management of it up to modern day. Whether this is a good or bad thing depends on one's opinion about Freemasonry. So first, we should understand what Freemasonry is all about.
Freemasonry is a secret brotherhood whose origins go back to the builders' guilds of the Middle Ages. Maçon in French means bricklayer. It was born out of the need of these craftsmen to aggressively protect their skills, and by doing so, to maintain their status and livelihoods. In addition, Their secrecy helped save their brethren from official persecution, since many of the Masonic ideals clashed head-on with those of the Church in Rome. By the end of the Middle Ages, Masonry had evolved into Freemasonry, or Free and Accepted Masons. Free for not admitting slaves or serfs into their ranks, and accepted for now accepting not only builders, but also anyone who swore allegiance to their rules. Freemasonry became an anti-clerical, an anti-monarchical secret society that kept many of the symbols and rituals of the original builders' guilds. Though it became a civilian social organization with avowedly humanistic objectives, on many occasions its operations were secret and unmistakably political.
For centuries, Freemasonry was officially persecuted by the church and the establishment. However, many nobles and clergymen did in fact belong to this secret society. Its ability to attract even those who were supposed to be against it made Freemasonry all that more intriguing and disturbing.
The origins of Freemasonry in the United States go back to 1682, when Scotsman John Skene, an active member of the Scottish Aberdeen Lodge, took residence in the American colony of New England. 3 years later, he was made Deputy Governor of West Jersey. Jonathan Belcher, who was Royal Governor of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, became a Freemason in London in 1704, and boasted of being the first Freemason to be born in the United States.
By 1776, what we now call the United States were barely 13 small colonies crowded upon the East Coast. They had been founded by English Protestant Puritans, the famous Pilgrims, who had been expelled from England by the powerful Anglican Church. The rest of the country was a rich and vast terrain inhabited exclusively by native tribes, an unexplored land that was more often than not conquered at gunpoint.
This was an era where men worked, fought and dreamed while God watched them from the pulpit, or so they believed. In that rugged landscape, within a social structure dominated by the Puritans, the first Freemasons began to disseminate the revolutionary ideas they had brought from Europe. Ideas of religious freedom, independence, science, rationalism and humanism.
The emerging American Freemasons were strongly influenced by the Rosicrucians, another secret society that was created in Germany in the early 15th century for the study of the hidden arts. The American Freemasons adopted many of the Rosicrucians' mystical ways, as well as their Greek and Egyptian symbols, symbols that can be seen in many American national emblems today.
The Rosicrucians claim to have founded their first American lodge in 1694 in Philadelphia, when William Penn, the Quaker who founded the first American community to advocate total religious liberty, Pennsylvania, invited Johann Jacob Zimmermann's Chapter of Perfection to leave Germany and join them. Zimmermann, a Rosicrucian, believed that Christ would return in the year 1700. So in 1694, they built an observatory on American soil to watch for the return of the Lord.
To Zimmermann's regret, Jesus did not show up, and the Rosicrucians subsequently dispersed around Pennsylvania. Some of them became wandering spiritual healers who used amulets and staged ceremonies to ensure good crops and to drive away bad luck.
In 1717, the Great Lodge of England was founded. It claimed authority over all other lodges in the English colonies. But the American lodges rejected the right of the Great Lodge to exert control over them, and they did not recognize its authority. The Great Lodge of England countered this by encouraging the creation of several other faithful lodges in the colonies.
It's important to point out that the uprising of the American Masonic lodges against the English ones predates the American Revolution by many years. Therefore, whether this was planned or not, they became the very first bearers of revolutionary thought. As they grew in number, the vision of independence spread across the whole country. In 1776, the United States declared their independence, and soon after, their constitution was adopted. The contribution of Freemasonry in these events was fundamental, since many brethren were involved.
In 1732, Benjamin Franklin was initiated into the Turn Tavern Lodge in Philadelphia. That same year, James Oglethorpe, founder of the Savannah Colony, which would later become the state of Georgia, created the Solomon Lodge. It was here that the two men destined to become the first Jewish-American Freemasons, Moses and Daniel Nunes, were initiated.
Regardless of their origin, these English and native lodges spread like wildfire throughout the country, fueled by the prestige that came with being a member of them. In 1740, most respectable men in the New England colonies either were or wanted to become Freemasons.
In 1773, a group of outraged Mohawks staged a protest against what they considered unfair English custom duties by dumping overboard the tea cargo of 3 ships. It was the famous Boston Tea Party. Today it is suspected that many of those supposed Mohawks were in fact disguised Freemasons who belonged to the St. Andrew's Lodge of Boston, a lodge that curiously did not convene that night.
The church was particularly infuriated by the fact that many Freemasons supported deism, a Christian philosophy that believes in a personal God and upholds a purely rational interpretation of Scripture, discrediting revelation.
According to deistic principles, the Bible holds many truths and wisdom, but it is not inspired by God. Deists also deny that Jesus is the Son of God, and claim that faith is no substitute for observable facts. They do not believe in prophets or miracles. God can only be known through experience and knowledge. For the Church of England, as well as for the Puritans, deism was clearly a heresy that had to be wiped out.
The persecution of heretic Freemasons was relentless, but nothing could stop them. Soon the British colonies in America would take their first great steps towards liberty, and in their footsteps the trace of Freemasonry could be clearly seen.
Freemason and revolutionary ideas blended well. Masonic principles chimed with the American culture of the era, steeped as it was in notions of fraternity, liberty, and equality. Pennsylvania was a particularly fertile breeding ground for Freemasonry, since its inhabitants considered it to be the promised land of those who had suffered persecution in Europe. Here, Freemason symbols even appeared on crockery and home furniture.
Although Freemasons were in favour of equality, slavery was still in existence in the United States, and they did not accept black people. So those freed slaves began to found their own lodges. Such was the case of the Prince Hall Lodge.
In 1775, while still under British rule, the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge was created in Boston as a segregated chapter for free blacks, named after an emancipated slave, Prince Hall. During the War of Independence, many of these black Freemasons, including Prince Hall, joined the revolutionary forces and fought with the Continental Army against the British. Today, the Prince Hall fraternity has over 4,500 lodges worldwide, with a membership of over 300,000 Freemasons.
In 1776, the United States of America declared their independence, and soon after, their constitution was adopted. The contribution of Freemasonry in these events was fundamental, since many brethren were involved. But it didn't end there. Freemasonry's involvement went a lot deeper, and it was at the foundation of the whole governmental system. So one wonders what previous oaths had the Freemason founding fathers taken before placing their right hand on the new constitution, and how much of what has been built since was done to protect the interest of the Freemasons.
16% of the signatories of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. A quarter of the signatories of the Articles of Confederation were Freemasons, and a third of the signatories of the Constitution were Freemasons. By the time George Washington took the oath of office as first President of the USA, a third of the governors of the original colonies were Freemasons too. Freemason John A.C. Muhlenberg was the first Speaker of the House of Representatives. Freemasons John J. Blair and William Cushing were justices in the first Supreme Court. Close to 46% of the officers of the Continental Army, or Independence Army, were Freemasons, as were almost half of their 78 generals.
Now, if we heed to the Freemasonry's ideals of liberty and fraternity and focus on its positive contributions, maybe it wouldn't matter if the United States is a Masonic country. However, we are speaking of a secret society that for centuries has practiced strange rituals and taken mysterious oaths, and whose practices have all taken place behind closed doors. So what if the most important democracy in the world really responded to the interests of small groups of people whose actual goals are kept secret from its own citizens? How much of the phrase "all men are equal under the law" remains true when we discover that the architects of this great democracy belong to societies whose members protect each other and won't even let their own women join?
After the Declaration of Independence, American lodges declared their own independence and stopped concealing their existence. They began to open headquarters in public buildings for all to see. This increased their popularity. Masonic halls were often used for social and civil gatherings, since they were usually the best venues in town. In spite of their declared non-political affiliation, Masonic lodges indeed became active in politics, and often operated openly and side by side with the established political parties.
Today we can see numerous traces that confirm the presence of Freemasonry in America. They are in plain view all around us, from the more conspicuous Masonic temples to the lesser-known symbols that are incorporated in its very own currency. And that is only the tip of the iceberg. What is actually below the surface? What is it that these symbols mean, that almost 300 million citizens swear by every day? What is the true ideology of the most powerful country in the world? And how does it affect their actions? And where will it lead them?
In the early 18th century, Freemason became particularly strong and influential in North America, where it played a key role in the creation of what today we know as the United States of America. Many of the USA's founding fathers were Freemasons, among them Benjamin Franklin. Franklin was a printer, scientist, inventor, politician and diplomat. In 1726, upon returning from England, he founded his own secret society, the Leather Apron Club. He was later initiated a freeman in a Philadelphia lodge and published the first American book on Freemasonry in 1734, the year that he was named Provincial Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. In 1755, Franklin participated in the inauguration of the first Masonic Hall in Philadelphia.
Without a doubt, Franklin was fully committed to the cause. But which cause was that? American? Masonic? Both, perhaps. Another famous American Freemason was George Washington, and a statue of him can still be seen today, posing as a Baphomet, a Masonic icon related to Lucifer. A mere coincidence, or does this have a more significant meaning? So what is the statue trying to tell us? The neoconservatives and ultra-religious groups in the USA today should perhaps ask themselves, what exactly are they celebrating on the 4th of July?
George Washington was initiated in 1752, while still a youth in Fredericksburg, Virginia. The following year he obtained the rank of Master Freemason. He took the oath of office as first President of the USA in the Federal Hall on Wall Street, using a Bible loaned by the neighbouring St. John's No. 1 Lodge. Centuries later, another GW, George W. Bush, swore on the same Bible, though he does not admit to being a Freemason. In May 1791, George Washington announced the creation of the new country's capital city, which would rise on the banks of the Potomac River. A month later, a group of Freemasons gathered in the town of Alexandria for a ceremony in which they laid the foundation stone of the city that would soon be called Washington, D.C., and whose design would be influenced by Masonic symbolism. On September the 18th, 1793, George Washington, wearing the leather apron and ruff of a Grand Master, laid the foundation stone of the Capitol, a building that has all the hallmarks of Masonic architecture.
The capital of the United States of America is perhaps the city with the most symbolism in the world. The design of its buildings, statues and monuments are true to the Freemason principles upon which the city was founded.
The first blueprints of the Capitol were drawn up in August 1791 by French engineer Pierre-Charles L'Enfant. L'Enfant worked together with the American civil engineer and astronomer Andrew Ellicott, who charted the land in 1790 under the directions of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. Except for Jefferson, they were all Freemasons. In L'Enfant's blueprints, the three most important buildings, the Capitol, the White House, and Washington's monument, the obelisk, form a right-angled triangle, where the hypotenuse is Pennsylvania Avenue, between the White House and the Capitol. The said square is the Masonic symbol, par excellence.
It's worth asking why American symbols do not portray anything American. For example, the obelisk. Although it stands out in an unmistakable way, few question why this Egyptian symbol stands dominantly in the heart of the city rather than something a little more American. The answer is obelisks, like many other Egyptian constructions such as pyramids, are Hermetic symbols and therefore both Masonic and especially Rosicrucian.
True to their origins as builders, Freemasons always gave fundamental importance to architectonic symbols. To this day, there are those who assert the intersection of Massachusetts Avenue, Rhode Island Avenue, Connecticut Avenue, Vermont Avenue, and K Street Northwest form a Pythagorean pentagram or five-point star, a design scheme which many evangelists and other conservative groups believe to be satanic. We can conclude that Washington, D.C. is, right from its foundational design, a symbolic evocation of Masonic principles.
In the early 19th century, America was swarming with Masonic lodges, and their members were all important people in the community. Now, if the Brotherhood had done so much for the American Revolution, if their principles were so innocent, and they enjoyed widespread influence and social prestige, why did the lodges still remain so secretive? What did they have to hide, once free from the monarchy and the Church of England? Perhaps the many Freemasons that are studied in American history textbooks today could have provided us with the answers.
In 1801, John Marshall, previously Grand Master of Virginia, was named Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In 1804, Lewis and Clark, both Freemasons, left St. Louis to explore the Pacific coast, becoming the first pioneers, and in the process claiming land that belonged to Native Americans in the name of the United States, and presumably Freemasonry. Freemason Stephen Austin established the first Anglo-American colony in the Mexican state of Texas. Andrew Jackson was the first president of the USA to previously have been Grand Master of his own state. He was in office from 1829 to 1837.
However, in this, its most active period, Freemasonry was infiltrated by a sect who had disturbing objectives, the Illuminati of Bavaria, who were, or still are, a mysterious organization who are capable of infiltrating one of the oldest brotherhoods in the world to manipulate it for their own needs.
Freemasonry was undoubtedly the starting point for many of the most progressive ideas of the 18th century. In the American continent, the old European Brotherhood found a fertile soil for its anti-monarchic and anti-clergy ideas to flourish. Freemasonry had a direct and profound influence on the independence movements of Argentina, Chile, Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela, Colombia, and of course, the United States of America.
Up to this point, we can say that beyond the typical criticism, Freemasonry's role in American history was positive. In 1776, in Germany, the Order of Illuminati of Bavaria was founded. This was an organization created by a megalomaniac that very soon infiltrated almost all the European Freemasonry and perhaps the American lodges too. The Illuminati proposed putting an end to religion and all established government to create a new world order. When they were exposed, people began to panic, and the whole of Freemasonry was subject to suspicion. And from this, it would never fully recover.
In 1776, just a few months before the American Declaration of Independence, the Order of the Illuminati was founded in Bavaria, in what is today part of Germany. Their founder and driving force was Adam Weishaupt, an eccentric idealist and a true megalomaniac, who, inspired by the ideas of Rousseau, went in a quest to satisfy his own vaulting ambitions. Just like the great philosopher, Weishaupt upheld that man should embrace his pure, natural state and govern himself. But unlike Rousseau, Weishaupt advocated the dissolution of the state, the abolition of private property, and the banning of all religions. He wanted to recast all existing societies and cultures into a single, secular order, one that he himself would rule. Adam Weishaupt intended to be a true world dictator. The Order of the Illuminati spread throughout Europe and grew strong among Freemasons and the nobility, until they were eventually discovered and their ambitions thwarted, or so it was believed at the time. However, it is suspected that years later, the French Revolution and its subsequent phase of terror were carefully staged and managed by the Illuminati. In 1798, their presence was reported in America, causing the infamous New England Illuminati panic.
If, since 1776, the Illuminati had infiltrated Freemasonry, one could ask how many of the founding fathers were Illuminati as well as being Freemasons. This possibility was perfect ammunition for the enemies of Freemasonry.
With the Declaration of Independence, the United States established freedom of worship. The religious and conservative sectors were furious, and an anti-Masonic campaign was soon up and running. The New England Illuminati panic could have been a manufactured propaganda campaign designed to nullify the actions of the founding fathers, or it could have been genuine. The fact remains that John Adams, the second President of the United States, designated May the 9th as a day of fasting and worship to implore the heavens' mercy and blessing for the imperiled nation.
After this statement from Adams, the paranoia of the Illuminati became hysteria. The prestigious Reverend Jedediah Morse of Boston devoted 3 months of sermons to condemn what he called a conspiracy to attack the true religion and liberty. He held the Illuminati responsible of attempting to destroy the system, unleash chaos, and take control of the world.
Morse based his theories on those of Scottish Freemason John Robison, who maintained that the Illuminati, who attacked thrones and altars, had already established themselves in the United States. Morse's sermons, along with the wide circulation of Robison's books and those of Abbot Augustin Barruel, stoked the hysteria and provoked sensationalist newspaper stories. In the end, no hard evidence of an Illuminati conspiracy could ever be found.
However, there is one curious fact. Thomas Jefferson himself, one of the founding fathers of the new nation, defended the Illuminati in writing. From that moment on, he would be accused himself of being one of the infiltrators in America.
After reading one of the books by Burwell, Jefferson wrote a letter to Bishop Madison, saying that Adam Weishaupt believes in the indefinite perfectibility of man. He thinks that he may in time be rendered so perfect that he will be able to govern himself in every circumstance so as to injure none, to do all the good he can, to leave government no occasion to exercise their powers over him, and of course, to render political government useless. This, you know, is not far removed from our own ideals.
Was Thomas Jefferson an Illuminati? His enemies immediately used this letter against him.
The Federalist Party hit back and accused the Democratic Republican Party, headed by Jefferson and Madison, of being puppets controlled by the Illuminati. The truth perhaps will never be known, but it is worth pointing out that Jefferson's and Madison's party is the direct ancestor of the modern Republican and Democrat parties that have dominated the US political system since the Civil War.
The design of the Great Seal of the USA itself is covered with Masonic symbols. Some even dare say Illuminati symbols. And this seal is printed, of all places, on the dollar bill, the very currency that rules the world.
The Great Seal of the US was created in 1782, and due to its Masonic symbolism, it has been accused of being both Illuminati and Satanist by various conservative and religious groups. One side shows the American bald eagle. The original design had a phoenix, another Masonic symbol. Above the eagle can be seen 13 stars inside a circular design, representing a new constellation. The stars are five-pointed, or pentagrams, a Masonic and Hermetic symbol. It is often linked to satanic worship. The layout of the pentagrams forms a hexagram, or Star of David, another Kabbalistic and Hermetic symbol. On the right claw, 13 arrows. On the left, an olive branch with 13 leaves. Across the breast of the eagle, a shield with 13 stripes. Why 13? Maybe because this was the number of the original American colonies. Or maybe because this is the number of Illuminati degrees. But the most curious details on the reverse side of the seal, where there is a truncated pyramid with 13 steps. The capstone bears the symbol of the great architect of the universe, the all-seeing eye. Underneath the pyramid reads Novus Ordo Seclorum, or New Secular Order, strikingly similar to the Illuminati's manifesto for a new world order. It is also possible to draw a pentagram whose vertices rest on letters M, A, S, O, N, and the all-seeing eye. These letters spell both Mason as well as AONSM, that could stand for Ancient Order, Noble Mystic Shrine, an order appendant to Freemasonry. The pyramid itself is a typical Masonic symbol. The year 1776 in Roman numerals corresponds to that of the Declaration of Independence, but also to the year in which the Order of the Illuminati was founded. E pluribus unum means from all one, a phrase that has been associated with the Illuminati plans of world domination under a single government.
What part of this is mere chance? How much just fantasy? And what is actually true? Who can say? Though we cannot forget that most of these accusations came from the ultra-conservative sectors, similar to those that still prevail in the United States today. People who are oversensitive, phobic and paranoid, and fans of the traditional sport of witch hunting. The panic generated by Morse's sermons finally dissipated, but less than 3 decades later, a massive anti-Masonic paranoia was unleashed, and this time its members would be pursued relentlessly.
In September 1826, in the small town of Batavia, in New York State, a man named William Morgan disappeared. He was a former Freemason and a swindler who had threatened to write a book revealing the secrets of the secret society. Up until then, many anti-Masonic books had been published, but all of them had been written by outsiders. Morgan's book promised to be the first one written by an insider, and one which would reveal some of their deepest secrets. The Freemasons of Batavia first tried to burn down the print, and then managed to have Morgan accused of petty crimes. Finally they abducted him and carried him to Fort Niagara on Lake Ontario, ordering him to cross the border into Canada. They said they gave him $500, a horse, and told him to head north and never come back. Morgan was never seen again.
Without doubt, the Freemasons' reaction was horrific, but those were wild times, and America was a wild country. Many suspected that the only journey that Morgan made was to the bottom of the lake. The fact remains that nobody saw him alive again, and the episode ended in a suspicious trial that unleashed the wrath of the population, and a witch hunt followed.
26 Freemasons were accused, and 6 of them faced trial, although not for murder. The verdicts were very lenient. It was widely believed that the district attorney and the judges were also Freemasons. This caused a wave of demonstrations, began in New York and spread all over the country. Public opinion was once again inflamed.
In the long run, the book was finally published by a daring associate of Morgan's. The paranoid and scandalous tone of the book made it an immediate bestseller. The average American already loved to imagine conspiracies and speculate about invisible enemies. Suddenly, the honorable and prestigious society became a sinister sect in the public eye.
On St. John's Day, 3,000 people went to the headquarters of the Batavia Lodge, attacked the Freemasons, and looted the premises. In every town and village, lists were published denouncing the local Freemasons. In the years that followed, anti-Masonic sentiment spread all over the United States. In the 1832 presidential election, the anti-Masonic party came in third, with 8% of the votes going to its candidate, William Wirt, a former Freemason.
Freemasonry stood accused of being anti-democratic, anti-American and anti-Christian. A cloud of suspicion was cast over all the country regarding Freemason congressmen, judges and public servants. It would not be the last time that a ghost enemy would be created in times of elections.
Between 1827 and 1837, Freemasons dropped in numbers, from 100,000 to 40,000. Of the 500 active lodges in New York, only 75 remained. Many went underground and abandoned their annual banquets and parades.
But Freemasonry had thick roots that ran deep. In just a few years, thanks to a certain Albert Pike, it made an amazing comeback. And since that new resurgence, its members would once again reach the highest positions in American society.
Albert Pike was a brilliant intellectual. In 1850, he was initiated into the Western Star Lodge, number 2 of Little Rock, Arkansas, and went on to accumulate more than 130 Masonic degrees. It has been said that Pike was an Illuminati, and also one of the founders of the Ku Klux Klan, though there is little evidence to support either of these claims. It is also said that together with Giuseppe Mazzini, a great Italian Freemason leader, he had planned 3 world wars, at the end of which the Illuminati would take over world power. This assertion is also unproven, but quite popular on websites and books.
Pike brought about a Masonic resurgence through many union-like fraternities and other forms of Masonic social organizations, such as mutual benefit funds. These became prosperous business ventures, quite popular with the American middle class, and made Freemasonry popular once again.
In 1885, the Statue of Liberty was presented to the United States by France to celebrate the former's centennial in 1886. There are those who say that it was really a gift from the Freemasons of the Great Orient of France for the centennial of the First Masonic Republic. The two explanations are not mutually exclusive. The statue holds aloft the torch of illumination, or the flaming torch of reason, which symbolizes the sun. Its official name is Liberty, Enlightening the World. It was designed by a Freemason sculptor named Frederic Auguste Bartholdi. The French engineer who built it was also a Freemason, Gustave Eiffel, who also built the tower that bears his name in Paris. The foundation stone was laid in a Masonic ceremony organized by the New York lodges in 1884. The Statue of Liberty is a perfect example of how Freemasonry can conceal its messages in clear sight of all. For more than a century, hundreds of thousands of immigrants from all over the world and hundreds of millions of tourists have greeted and admired, without knowing it, a Masonic symbol of illumination.
At the beginning of the 20th century, Freemasonry was once again a powerful force in the United States. The days of persecution were long gone. Many of the key government jobs were back in their hands. Among them, the Oval Office in the White House.
Theodore Roosevelt, president from 1901 to 1909, was master of the Lodge Mightycock, number 806 of Oyster Bay, New York. William Howard Taft, president between 1909 and 1913, was Grand Master of Ohio Freemasonry. Warren G. Harding, president from 1921 to 1923, was a degree 33 Mason in Ohio Fraternity, number 26.
With the Great Depression of the 30s, the Brotherhood lost almost 600,000 members. However, Franklin D. Roosevelt, a Freemason himself, brought the country back from the brink of disaster. The Freemasons' prestige kept growing.
The growth of Freemasonry lasted until well into the early 1960s. From its ranks emerged presidents and senators, including Harry S. Truman, president from 1945 to 1953. He had attained the rank of Grand Master of Missouri Freemasonry, the highest degree in the organization. The last president to be an acknowledged Freemason was Lyndon B. Johnson, who was initiated as a Mason in Texas, and whose time in office lasted from 1963 to 1969. Johnson stepped up into office following the murder of the first ever Catholic president of the USA, John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
And then suddenly, Freemasonry lost its popularity. No longer was it a subject of conversation, except for books on conspiracies and dubious websites. Had Freemasonry gone out of fashion, or was it just taking a break after a job well done?
It's hard to believe that a secret society, which has influenced the creation and development of the most powerful state on earth, whose presence is felt in all of that state's national symbols, has been reduced to a mere social circle, where citizens in exotic clothes practice secret rituals that alternate with bingo events and themed balls. Today, fundamentalist groups, such as televangelists, ultra-conservative Christians, and elected but totalitarian leaders seem to flourish as they once did in the Middle Ages. It stands to reason that their historic archenemy, Freemasonry, would not yield ground that easily.
Was or is Freemasonry a state within a state, a shadow government? And do they dominate the world by dominating its most powerful nation? The United States is a country with the most accessible public information on earth. However, it was built brick by brick, law by law, following the secret principles of a hermetic society that doesn't even open its rituals to the public. A large percentage of the country's leading men were or are Freemasons. In the land of opportunity where all are supposedly equal under the law, how does belonging to this special brotherhood help you in any way? How many American symbols really represent something different to what citizens believe? The vast majority of American citizens hold a job, pay their mortgage, watch the news at 8, and most of them even vote when they are required to. They live under the illusion that they control their own destiny and the destiny of their families. Meanwhile, the all-seeing eye watches attentively from the very currency that they all work so hard to attain. The world is flooded with secret societies. Their members range from unknown citizens and eccentrics to top executives in the most important companies, banks, and even governments. Some have become famous in recent years because of the boom in conspiracy literature. 3 of them in particular in recent years have caught the public eye: Skull and Bones, the Bilderberg Group, and the Council on Foreign Relations, or the CFR. To their members, these are nothing but innocent fraternities or simple think tanks. To their critics, parallel world governments. As always, the truth lies somewhere in between. The United States of America is the most powerful country in the world, the single remaining superpower that dictates the global agenda. But ironically, the political system of this champion of democracy was built under the guidance of mysterious fraternities and organizations we know little or nothing about.
Secret societies have actively participated in the construction of the American governmental system. Freemasonry, to name just one society, left its imprint on the Declaration of Independence, the American Constitution, and on dozens of national symbols, from the Great Seal of the US to the dollar bill. This American passion for secrets, rituals, and exclusive clubs has been particularly strong in its universities, where the fraternity system was developed. The fraternities, or frats as they're most commonly referred to, are student associations with academic and philanthropic goals. However, they also abound in codes of silence and initiation rites, very similar to those found in Freemasonry and other secret societies. The first ever recorded frats were the Flat Hat Club and the Phi Beta Kappa, both founded at Yale University.
Also in Yale, one of the most enigmatic and most notorious fraternities in the world arose, one that has always been favored by the cream of American society. Its name, Skull and Bones.
Skull and Bones was founded in 1832. Its original name was the Eulogian Club. Its creator was a merchant named William Huntington Russell, owner of Russell and Company, a transport company which was rumoured to smuggle opium into China during the Opium Wars. The name Skull and Bones probably comes from a curious tradition. During their meetings in the campus chapel at Yale, the society used to hang a skull and 2 crossed shin bones upon the door, as a warning that they should not be disturbed. The society was also known as the Order of Death, Cooperation Star, or simply the Order.
In 1856, 24 years after its foundation, the Order was granted an important plot of land on the university campus and built its official headquarters there. It is a windowless stone construction that can still be seen today. They call it the Tomb.
The tomb has a dark, labyrinth-like layout that spans 3 floors and an attic. It comprises a number of halls and secret cabinets, chambers with mannequins in full armour, candlesticks, old photos, flags and manuscripts, and a sinister collection of bones, supposedly belonging to historical figures, including the skulls of Mexican revolutionary Pancho Villa and the Indian chief Geronimo, and even that of Panamanian dictator General Omar Torrijos. In the keep of the labyrinth, there is a vault with the enigmatic number 322 on the door. Inside, there are just 2 chairs and a table. This was where the candidates are said to meet Madame, a skeleton that is supposed to be that of Madame Pompadour.
Their passion for bones and skulls could be considered in bad, albeit innocent taste. However, a much more serious accusation hangs over the Brotherhood of Death: its sympathy for the Nazis.
Critics of Skull and Bones insist that the society is not originally American, but rather an offshoot of some German right-wing order. This could well be true. Its founder, William Russell, did indeed live for some time in Germany before attending to his senior year at Yale. And it was actually on returning to the USA that he established the fraternity. Always according to its critics, the number 322, the Order's identifying number, hides a coded message. The 32 represents the year of its foundation, 1832, and the additional 2 stands for the fact that it's the 2nd chapter within an international order. Alexandra Robbins, a Yale graduate and author of a book on the subject, stated that the society owns a valuable collection of Nazi objects and memorabilia, and eats its dinners off Hitler's private silver service. A large part of their liturgy is written in German. Who was the fool? Who was the wise man, beggar or king? Whether poor or rich, all's the same in death.
A sizable part of the American military-industrial complex of the early 20th century collaborated with the Nazi regime in Germany, contributing immensely to their rise to power. This historical fact is unknown to most people even today. Also unknown is the strong involvement of bonesmen in the pre-war German-American relations. But history keeps its own records, and the past always returns to haunt us.
In 1930, Prescott Sheldon Bush, father of President George H. and grandfather of President George W., a member of the Skull and Bones class of 1917, and president of the Union Banking Corporation, engaged in a number of profitable business deals with Fritz Thyssen, the German steel tycoon who supplied Hitler's war machine. The UBC was closed by President Truman during the Second World War, under the Trading with the Enemy Act. In other words, for doing business with the Nazis. Apart from Prescott Bush, several other directors of the Union Banking Corporation in New York were also 1917 bonesmen, including E. Roland Harriman and Ellery Sedgwick James. In 1938, Bush, by then executive associate of Brown Brothers Harriman, issued a loan to Hitler's Germany to enable the latter to import American Standard Oil fuel.
In 1941, the year the United States entered the war against the Third Reich, Standard Oil, which belonged to Rockefellers, Bonesman themselves, had 6 oil tankers sailing under Panamanian flags and manned by German crews. These vessels carried fuel from their American refineries to the Canary Islands, where their German submarines were being refueled. In the meantime, Allied troops were losing their lives on European battlefields.
Investigator Anthony Sutton claims that Skull and Bones is not at all an American society, but a branch of a foreign secret society. According to this expert, it is one of the reasons why secrecy in the order is so vital.
However, the list of its members is a true who's who of American society. Many of these influential personalities are advocates of the American way of life.
Skull and Bones membership certainly has its privileges. At least 3 American presidents were or are Bonesmen. George W. Bush, his father George H. Bush, and William Taft. The proposition that this small club of the well-to-do pulls the strings of American power, and through it those of the whole world, by placing its associates in key power positions, is supported by substantial evidence. The elections of 2004 saw the almost impossible come true. Both the Republican candidate George W. Bush and his Democrat rival John F. Kerry were members of Skull and Bones. That's to say, prior to running as representatives of parties that supposedly propound opposite political visions, they had both sworn allegiance to the same mysterious principles. And what's worse, they share secrets that are not known to their own constituents.
The million-dollar question for American citizens and the world as a whole is, do Bonesmen put their frat fidelity above that of their civic responsibilities? As the BCCI case clearly shows, the answer is undeniably yes.
By the end of the 1980s, the scandal concerning the Bank of Commerce and Credit International was making the headlines. The BCCI was accused of laundering drug money and financing terrorist operations. The scandal tarnished the reputation of the US government, since the bank operated freely in America and was a regular contributor to political campaigns. The administration of Bonesman George H. Bush blocked the investigation, which had in any case been entrusted to a Senate commission chaired by Bonesman John Kerry. The BCCI was absorbed by more respectable banks, and the subject was never revived.
Who runs Skull and Bones? Up to what point are Bonesmen able to influence the decisions of fellow members? Perhaps by looking into their initiation rituals, we will be able to have some idea of what kind of power the society holds over its brethren, whether they are industry leaders, intellectuals or politicians, and speculate how they use that power should the need arise.
Each year, only 15 students entering their senior year at the University of Yale are admitted. The candidates must have been tapped by those senior classmen of Yale University who make up the current membership. The criterion for selection also includes the candidate's potential to increase the power and prestige of the society. 2 votes against the candidate are enough for him to be rejected. During their initiation, candidates must recount all their sexual exploits. Finally, they are expected to perform various oaths, kiss some feet, and drink blood. They then have to lie naked in a coffin, and, after masturbating in full view of the others, swear to never reveal their membership of the order. The candidates are then introduced to their future companions, who wear masks for the occasion. Uncle Toby, the Knights, the Small Devil, Don Quixote, and the Pope. Their ceremony ends with a grand party that lasts for hours.
To imagine presidents of the United States in this situation is highly disturbing, but even more distressing is to realize that the candidate is now subject to blackmail. All the brethren have witnessed the humiliation of the candidate. Each one has spoken of his darkest secrets. Nobody now feels he can break the pact of silence with the order. As of that moment, betrayal is highly unlikely.
The government of the world's only superpower is packed with bonesmen. George W. Bush named 11 bonesman officials in his first government. Add to this various senators, congressmen, and chief justices, directors of the CIA, the Federal Reserve, and directors of banks such as J.P. Morgan Chase and Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. The American media is little different. Among others, Time and Newsweek magazines, in theory competitors, were both founded by bonesmen. The oldest and most influential families also belong to this select club. Bush, Bundy, Harriman, Lord, Phelps, Rockefeller, Taft, Whitney. All of them have undergone the odd ritual of initiation. All have spilled their darkest secrets. All have been ritually humiliated in front of their peers. And all of them owe loyalty to the order. It is estimated that there are some 800 bonesmen alive today, around half of them active and in key positions in the American economy and political establishment.
There are plenty of reasons to be shocked just by what we have learned so far. This is a secret society founded by an alleged drug lord that counts among its members people who have financed the Nazis. Their members meet in a bunker supposedly full of stolen skeletons, and among its brethren we find no less than the president of the most powerful country on earth, and also his main political contender. And Skull and Bones is not the only secret society that appears to be pulling the strings of world power. There are at least 2 other organizations who are suspected of foul play, ranging from economic manipulation to attempting to achieve world control. They are the Bilderberg Group and the mysterious Council of Foreign Relations.
Skull and Bones has seen its power grow steadily since its foundation in 1832. In spite of its alleged early links to drug trafficking and Nazism, most of its known members are respectable, influential politicians and businessmen. But Skull and Bones is not the only secret society whose influence reaches the highest ranks of power. There are more.
One of the organizations most suspected of pulling the strings of world power behind the facade of an altruistic organization is the CFR, or Council on Foreign Relations. They're also hidden away here in Washington, D.C. on the 7th floor of this building. They define themselves as a non-partisan resource for information and analysis. That is to say, an innocent think tank. But are they what they say they are? The answer to this question may hold the key to understanding the true origin of many events that happen to us every day, and seem to be a result of our own free will.
The Council of Foreign Relations was founded during the First World War, when a university fraternity presented President Woodrow Wilson with a set of proposals that detailed options to reinforce world democracy when Kaiser Wilhelm II was eventually defeated. The proposals were backed by Colonel Edward Mandell House, advisor to President Wilson. Wilson presented the project to Congress in January 1918, where it was approved. And the CFR was officially founded in 1921. Its first sponsors were members of the most powerful families in the US: Rockefeller, Mellon, Harriman, Schiff, Kuhn, Loeb, and Carnegie. It was also backed by important foreign citizens, including multi-millionaire South African colonizer Sir Cecil Rhodes, and European bankers Warburg and Rothschild.
The CFR makes no secret of who their members are or their activities. At least that's how it seems. Its headquarters are on Park Avenue and 68th Street in New York City. Its reports can be freely downloaded from the internet, where the CFR publishes a full web page at www.cfr.org. It runs a newspaper that is the most prestigious political analysis journal in the United States, Foreign Affairs. It seems they have nothing to hide. However, its critics say that it's nothing more than a facade, that the CFR is a dangerous organisation, set on achieving full global control through the levers of economy and finance. In other words, they're like executives out to privatise world power.
According to its critics, the domination strategy of the CFR is to control both sides of conflicts, and its ultimate goal, the creation of a private world government that would run countries as corporations. To achieve this, it would first have to erode the political structures of all sovereign states. Then it would have to foster worldwide socio-cultural standardization. And finally, it would have to impose a globalized financial system that it could control. Critics add that all of this would be achieved by provoking global conflicts that would keep the masses united against real or imagined common enemies. Any similarity with reality is surely pure coincidence.
But can an organisation, no matter how hard it tries to manipulate the world, actually achieve this? If so, how much power would it need to amass?
To be allowed to join the select 4,200 members the CFR has today, it is mandatory to be American, or to be about to obtain American citizenship. The council is loaded with top executives, financial institutions, powerful industry leaders, and mass media executives. Academics and scholars, high-ranking military personnel, politicians, public officers, deans of universities and research centres are also welcome.
Their reports identify threats, opportunities, strengths and weaknesses, and then offer operational, tactical and strategic planning in all the spheres of interest to the United States. The question is this for the better or worse? The list of its most prominent members is a conspiracy theorist's dream come true.
Among CFR's most renowned members are David Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, Bill Clinton, former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, Hungarian-American billionaire George Soros, Supreme Court Judge Stephen Breyer, Low CBS Network's President Lawrence A. Tisch, former US Secretary of State General Colin Powell, General Electric's former chairman and CEO Jack Welch, current US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, W. Thomas Johnson, President of CNN, and Katharine Graham, President of the Washington Post, Newsweek, International Herald Tribune Group. That's not to mention Alan Welsh Dulles, founding father of the CIA, and banker Paul Moritz Warburg, who was born in Germany and emigrated to the United States, where in 1913 he drew up and promoted the legislation that would create the Federal Reserve Bank. This is the American Central Bank, whose capital is not public, as would normally be expected, but is instead in the hands of private banks.
The Federal Reserve is not the only institution related to the CFR. The International Monetary Fund behind me and the World Bank close by were both created by CFR members. These three organisations control most of the world's capital, as well as distribution and aid policies. That is to say, they decide who wins and who loses.
Both the IMF and the World Bank have come in for some heavy criticism over many years for their lousy management of world crises, when instead of acting like last resort moneylenders, as their mission states, they became involved in dictating the macroeconomic policies of deeply indebted nations, drowning them in more and more debt. This policy had catastrophic results for countries such as Brazil, Argentina, Turkey and Mexico. Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel laureate for economics, has repeatedly attacked the performance of the fund, suggesting that it was the true cause of many of the aforementioned crises. This cannot be brushed off as hearsay, since Stiglitz was chief economist and senior vice president of the World Bank from 1997 to 2000. In other words, an insider.
If we observe how the price of medical supplies generates gigantic profits for those who produce them, and at the same time kill millions of people who cannot afford to buy them, if we stop to think about the irreparable damage that multinational corporations carry out in the so-called third world countries, if we study the mechanisms of usurious loans of the world banking system that cyclically provoke crises that sink entire countries below the poverty line, it's worth asking, is economic war more effective than conventional war when it comes to achieving world power? Are the members of the CFR those responsible for carrying it out? Or is it all nothing but a natural byproduct of the capitalist system?
The idea of a world dominated by private corporations, led by the CFR, might sound nonsensical. These corporations have a joint turnover that is almost twice the GDP of the United States, and employ more than 25 million people in the United States alone. Their power is surely already strong enough to twist some political arms worldwide. Perhaps the CFR is just an innocent think tank, like its members say it is. One thing is certain: the undeniable and enormous power wielded by such a group of influential people, for better or for worse.
What other secret societies pull the strings? Or better said, what other societies secretly pull the strings on the world stage?
Most experts agree that one of the traits of contemporary secret societies is that they're no longer guided by ideology, but rather by pure and simple economics. In practice, this means that they use their influence in the corporate world to force entire countries to serve their interests. The average person is completely unaware of how national strategic decisions are taken, and whatever changes his vote may bring about happen only over the very long term, and usually prove to be merely cosmetic.
If there's one secret society that has every characteristic needed to raise suspicion, it's the Bilderberg Group. Surely the most exclusive club on the planet, and perhaps the organization that really controls the world.
The Bilderberg Group is named after the Bilderberg Hotel in Oosterbeek, Holland, where it first met. Its founders were Joseph Rettinger, a Polish emigre with social democratic ideas, and Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. The annual meetings that it has held since then have been regarded as true milestones in international politics. For the occasion, each country sends 2 guests, one of whom is conservative, the other liberal. According to Prince Bernhard, the group was created as an entity destined to fortify the North Atlantic Unit, to stop Soviet expansionism, and to promote cooperation and the economic development of the countries of the West.
Sometimes to better understand an organization, you need to know more about the people who work for it. There are 2 interesting facts that question the integrity of the founder of the Bilderberg Group. Firstly, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands was an active member of Hitler's SS in his youth. Second, he had to stop heading the meetings in 1976 after being involved in the Lockheed scandal, related to the purchase of fighter jets. On that occasion, Lockheed was found to have bribed Japanese, Dutch and Italian officers.
The Nazi background of Prince Bernhard did not stop the Bilderberg Group from being supported by Social Democrats, or by the Rothschild Bank, or the Rockefellers, both of Jewish origin. Other early sponsors included the Wallenbergs, owners of Electrolux and Ericsson in Sweden. All of them still actively participate in the annual general meetings of the group, either directly or through their representatives.
The only thing that this confirms is that when it comes to making decisions that will affect the world, ideology doesn't really play that much of a role. After all, business is business.
The venue, the agenda, and the participants are not secret. What remains undisclosed, however, are the topics discussed, since the meeting is held behind closed doors, and no detailed reports are published. The conference takes place during a weekend in May, and lasts 3 full days, usually a few weeks before the G8's annual meeting. A fleet of black limousines drives the guests to a luxury hotel or palace of choice. Security is tight and includes members of the attending country's secret services.
Their guests include bankers, top businessmen and media moguls, as well as European and American politicians and leaders. When looking at the meetings, we can get some idea of how the nations of the future will be. Economic power groups owning both the world's capital and the means for production in an overpopulated planet, sick with poverty and short on natural resources.
Past and present participants of the Bilderberg Group include the CEOs of France Telecom, Coca-Cola, Danone, Heineken, JP Morgan Chase, high-ranking British, American and European officials and cabinet members, and the editors of newspapers such as El País, La Repubblica, Le Figaro, the New York Times, Die Zeit, and the Wall Street Journal, among others.
What should we think when meetings like these have among their participants the owners of media giants and still their secret agenda goes unreported? Where does their loyalty lie? With their audience or with this secret society of the rich and powerful?
The most popular Bilderberg conspiracy theory states that the group is a test lab for policies and decisions that countries and powerful corporations will later implement. According to this theory, the guests exchange their views on the proposals made by the most powerful countries. Thus, it is possible to predict how these countries will react in real life and fine-tune the ensuing courses of action. In defense of the group, their most recent organizer, Viscount Etienne d'Avignon, has been clear. I don't think that we are a global ruling class, because I don't think a global ruling class exists, he said. I simply think that it's people who have influence, interested in speaking to other people who have influence. And he added, when people say, this is a secret government of the world, I say that if we were a secret government of the world, we should be bloody ashamed of ourselves.
The Bilderberg agenda, according to its own press releases, is the world agenda. Whether its members can then carry it out or not is open to discussion.
The items on the Bilderberg agenda vary very little from meeting to meeting. A state of the world analysis, discussions on security in the West, debates on economic and political trends in the developed countries, as well as discussions on nuclear energy, and lately, biotechnology. Other famous guests at the group's meetings have included Giovanni Agnelli, then president of Italy's Fiat auto giant, and Henry Kissinger. Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, and Angela Merkel attended before assuming public office, as did Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the UN. Annan was married to Raoul Wallenberg's niece. Wallenberg, as we stated before, is the patriarch of the powerful Swedish family that has supported the group from its very beginning. Other participants have included Henry Ford II, Georges Pompidou, Helmut Schmidt, and Baron Edmund de Rothschild. together with the father of the American atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer. More names follow: Donald Rumsfeld, Alan Greenspan, George Soros, David Rockefeller, Queen Beatrice of the Netherlands, and US Senator and former presidential candidate John Kerry. The list, while incomplete, represents the greatest amount of economic and political power ever concentrated in one single organisation.
Curiously enough, there are no disloyal Bilderbergs. Nobody has broken the silence, and if they do speak out, they do so many years after attending the meetings of the group, by which time it is already too late to change events. For many, these brief statements are proof that the suspicions about the group are staggeringly true.
Years after participating in a Bilderberg meeting, George McGee, former United States ambassador to Germany, said that the Treaty of Rome that created the European Common Market was born in the Bilderberg meetings. Jack Schenkman, chairman of Amalgamated Bank and also a Bilderberg member, said in 1996, "The idea of a common European currency was discussed a great many years before it came about. We also discussed the possibility of the United States re-establishing diplomatic relations with China before President Nixon actually did it."
One naturally wants to dismiss conspiracy theories, but it was David Rockefeller himself, a member of Skull and Bones, CFR and the Bilderberg Group, who said something that will be remembered as one of the most brutal confessions ever made.
Something must replace governments, and it seems to me that private power is the adequate entity to do it. Whether or not secret societies control the world is open to discussion. What is clearly undeniable is that the most powerful people in the world are indeed accustomed to belonging to one secret society or another. Currently, there are three societies that seem to have a monopoly on influencing global policy from behind the scenes: Skull and Bones, the Council of Foreign Relations, and the Bilderberg Group. According to their critics, they're not different organizations, but the three heads of the same monster that is dead set on dominating the world through control of labor, capital, and land.
But there is a fourth organization that conspiracy theorists keep bringing up. In contrast to the other three, its activities are public and nothing happens behind closed doors. However, that does not seem to stop the accusations against it. It's known as the Trilateral Commission.
In 1973, David Rockefeller, also a member of the CFR, requested that his fellow Bilderberg members include Japanese representatives in the group, but the idea was turned down. He then created the Trilateral Commission, which compromises annual private meetings of some 350 people. Again, top businessmen and corporation executives, media moguls, politicians, and non-governmental organizations. At this time, including the Japanese. The idea was to create a trialogue involving Asia, America, and Europe. US President Jimmy Carter was present at several of its meetings.
But the Trilateral is not only criticized by sensationalist authors. One of the most striking accusations came from Barry Goldwater, former Democratic American senator and presidential candidate, who described it in words that would make even the most paranoid person blush.
What the Trilateral is really up to is the creation of a world economic power, exceeding the political government of the nations involved. As managers and creators of the system, they will govern the world.
In the 1980s, it was not the left wing, but the right wing that lashed out at them. The American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and the ultra-conservative John Birch Society denounced the Trilateral Commission and wanted Congress to investigate it. But their demands died, buried in red tape.
During the 1980 presidential campaign, Ronald Reagan attacked Jimmy Carter by saying that there were 19 trilateralists, including Carter himself, in the administration. Reagan pledged that if he were elected president, he would not stop until he had exposed all of the secrets of the Trilateral Commission. But when Reagan finally became president, he included in his government 28 members of the CFR, 10 Bilderbergers, and at least 10 trilateralists. His vice president was none other than trilateralist George H. Bush.
At this point, we must face one of the greatest mysteries surrounding secret societies, because the same names appear time and time again. Conservative and liberal, Democrats and Republicans, Nazi sympathizers and social democrats all seem to live under the same roof, in the pursuit of a common goal. Although they seem to have radically opposing views, in reality, they obviously share some of the same interests. The only possible explanation for this is that an establishment actually exists within the establishment.
Perhaps that is what President George H. Bush was talking about when, after the Gulf War in 1991, he spoke of a new world order.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind.
There are just too many coincidences to ignore, too many signs that suggest something is terribly wrong. After all, if we ourselves had that much power, money, and access to classified information, who could say we would not also use it for our own benefit?
If we follow the course of history, since the Industrial Revolution, we will see a fascinating sequence of events unfolding that seem to prove the conspiracy theory, or at least provide major arguments for it. First, the ever-increasing concentration of cash and other resources in a few private hands, such as banks and gigantic multinational corporations. Corporations whose revenues are equivalent to the GDPs of entire countries, and whose mere survival demands more and more profits year after year, no matter the social cost. Second, the creation of public, multilateral control organizations that are actually nothing but the public arm of powerful private interests. These organizations include the American Federal Reserve, the World Bank, and the IMF. Third, the undeniable advance of the process known as privatization. That is, taking non-renewable natural resources, communication infrastructures, heavy industries, as well as defense, health, and banking systems, out of the hands of the people and delivering them into the clutches of profit-hungry private corporations. Fourth, the phenomenon of cultural and financial globalization, that in truth amounts to little more than the imposition of a dominant cultural and economic system upon those of peripheral countries. Fifth, the creation of worldwide conflicts and stereotypical enemies to manipulate public opinion and destroy any possibility of discussion or dissent, leading to the actual loss of many of the most elementary democratic rights. The US Patriot Act of 2001 is a good example of this. When panic attacks, people tend to accept more and more control. Finally, and most interesting of all, that almost all of the key players of these events, those who are really taking the decisions and hold the true political and economic reins of the West by being in command of its capital, armed forces, or even votes, are coincidentally grouped in just a few societies that meet behind closed doors.
Are Skull and Bones, the CFR, the Bilderberg Group and the Trilateral Commission the cause or the consequence? Does membership mean enjoying certain privileges, or is it that only those who enjoy certain privileges can become members? Does it really matter? Just look around and draw your own conclusions. Perhaps it's time to understand that nothing is a coincidence, that events are all interrelated and are always serving a higher power, that though hard to see, is in plain view to us all, if only we know where to look. Otherwise, while believing we are masters of our own destiny, we will be merely puppets in a play controlled by the sinister hands of secret societies.